When I was growing up in Burnie, it really didn't feel like there was a whole lot to do outside of footy or sport, generally speaking. Oh, well, there was getting into trouble, which was a popular pastime. But there was this little creative undercurrent bubbling under the surface in Burnie. I mean, for a start-off, there was the Big Ears Club. It was a little underground affair set up by a local band by the name of the Oddalites. Their drummer would occasionally wear eyeliner. Shocking. And the club welcomed musicians and spoken word poets to the club at the pub, and I have no idea what the wharfies made of it, but we loved it while it lasted. But sadly, it did not last. But thankfully, the 90s were just around the corner. They were to herald a swathe of creative genius to a town that many thought was an artistic wasteland. And their stories are shared in a new book by one of Burnie's celebrated sons, comedian, musician, artist, general talent, Justin HEAZLEWOOD, who you would also know as the bedroom philosopher. His book is titled Dream Burnie. Justin, hello. Welcome to the program.
Oh, hi there, Mel. I'm trying to sort of bill myself as Burnie's greatest living writer since Jackie Lambie.
Well, you are. You are. There you go.
Yeah. You need something to aspire to.
You do. Possibly also that requires a T-shirt. And I love that you completely own your Burniness. I mean, there was a time when you were asked where you sort of came from, or certainly me, and then under your breath, it was like, I'm from Burnie. And that was really, you kind of just left it at that and hoped people would move on because, it was polluted, it was very industrial. But you've imagined a very different kind of Burnie, Justin.
I think, Kurt Cobain came from a pretty rustic, rural sort of logging town. And I don't know, I feel like Burnie and you can sort of double down on the grunginess of it after a while, and maybe the 90s are in now. And there's definitely a way to flip Burnie and make it kind of cool and a badge of honour. And, I'm going to give it a red hot go.
Good. This will make up for Midnight Oil Song, which was not... it wasn't...
It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
It was 1981, and I feel like Burnie...
come a long way.
It needs more representation in popular culture.
I agree. And the concept for the book is wonderful because it's really not just a book. I mean, it's a work of art in itself, I guess. And I'm assuming that's what you were going for, Justin.
I wanted to write the most Burnie book about Burnie in the history of Burnie, and also wanted to champion the arts and talk about some of my formative teenage years and, interview the Albie Mangles of Burnie, Craig Gleeson, who was the Tasmanian of the Year in 2022, who's a documentary filmmaker.
That's a big stretch.
Several other people I hadn't actually heard of myself, and it occurred to me that there are all these amazing artists doing things abroad on the mainland and internationally who we weren't necessarily aware of each other, even if we were in the art scene. I don't necessarily think it's always a conspiracy why people aren't saying they're from Burnie or some sort of shame. I think sometimes it's just not getting reported accurately. And when you end up Googling enough people's bios that are from Burnie, the amount of times I see that they're from regional Tasmania or northwest Tasmania or just Tasmania. And I actually think the word Burnie gets omitted from almost, you could say, the internet, because it's being, it gets sort of absorbed into this, the regions. And so I just like saying the word Burnie a lot. And Burnie. Eventually I'll get the Burnie's #1 Google hits, and I will be responsible for Burnie's online presence, which I really enjoy that power at this stage in my middle age.
And I loved the beginning of it. When I opened the book, the first thing I thought was, oh, this is a bit different. And it is. It very much is. And it looks
it's psychedelic.
It is. And it looks like you're taking us on a tour of Burnie via the video game Dream Burnie, which then flashed me back to, to the Mount Street, Space Invaders and all that kind of stuff. But at any rate, so you meet some incredibly creative people along the way, as you say. But it's also a memoir, Justin, too. I mean, how do you reflect on your childhood growing up in Burnie, Justin? Because, it was tough at times.
Yeah, I'm someone who just happened to have written a really intense, hard-hitting childhood memoir in 2018 called Get Up Mum. So I am sort of on a bit of a journey and, I put out that story. I think I was ready to reflect on other angles of being in Burnie and just, the concerts I used to do at Helier College and some really formative years there and playing at Pool Jam at the Burnie Olympic Pool. Had some sort of renegade pop-up concert once, and that was one of my first gigs. I was downtown with a man dressed as an emu and a girl in a bed being pushed along the streets to promote the Burnie Shines Festival when I was 18, and it occurred to me that there's just all these colourful, wacky stories. I think wacky is a good word because sometimes we forget when you live in a smallish town in Tasmania, wacky things ensue. And in a way, we grew up in this cultural isolation pre-internet. We weren't overly aware of what was cool on the mainland, and you were left to your own devices in so many different ways. And I think a word that came up a lot in all the interviews I did with all the artists was I had space to dream. I was daydreaming. And it was kind of a cool sort of coincidence that I thought of the title Dream Burnie, and then I was hearing these different people. Just, we had this enormous ocean to stare out upon, and this sense of space, of there not being too many people in the town. And I just think for a lot of us creative types that weren't necessarily playing sport or making that our main objective, I think, a place like Burnie could actually, play in our favour for coming up with amazing ideas and sort of honing our stories. And so it's happened. I mean, look, I've got to admit, I don't remember really having anyone, or there may have been one or two, growing up in Burnie that you would describe as a mentor when I was a kid. But what about you, Justin? You mentioned Helier College. Did you have a creative mentor when you were growing up? I mean, you do have an excellent showdown with Eric Hiller in the book. Yeah, I have it out with Eric Hiller, the iconic art teacher at Helier, even though I never had him as a teacher at the time. Some sort of reverse engineering thing there. But I had an amazing librarian at Montolo Primary. Mrs. Svensson was always feeding me books and things because she could tell I was smart. And my grade 6 teacher, Mr. Burgess, I once asked him, what did you think of me in grade 6? And he went, "Oh, you were a nerd." And I love how he just said that right off the bat. And I'm like, I was a nerd, and some people were nerds, and you needed to be recognised as such. And good teachers saw that and just threw challenges at you or gave you green lights when you came at them with ideas like, I want to start the school newspaper. Which you did, the Montello Times. I ran the Montello Times for 2 years. Damien Quillam and I cooked it up in grade 5, and we were just sitting at the Macintosh computer, basically writing the whole thing ourselves, printing it out, formatting it, distributing it around classes. And I still look back on that, and I'm just really impressed by junior me and the environment that I was able to do that in. And I don't know, sometimes you've just sort of got to give yourself credit for these things and report on these achievements. I feel like a lot of artists that have come from Burnie and done great things, a lot of the people even within Tasmania aren't totally aware of what they've done because they're just not always reported on that well. There seems to be a little bit of a grey area or a black hole where things appear in a local newspaper once and then sort of never heard from again. And I like the idea of just all a book is just a document of people's achievements and stories in one convenient place. So I thought, let's get the 20 most prominent artists from Burnie together and just remind everyone of these, the fact Michaela Gleave has 220 million YouTube views for her blowing up balloon art piece. And Sabian Lynch from the band Alpha Wolf, who formed at Helier College, have just become Grammy nominated for Best a limited edition box set. That's happening at the minute. And they're up against Kate Bush and John Lennon.
Oh, they've got it in the bag.
So how cool is that? I mean, I went into this book project through the Burnie Arts Council having a 75th anniversary and keen to do a sort of project. And I went into it not even being aware of Sabian Lynch and Alpha Wolf and the fact Burnie had, a metal band who had 750,000 million, 750,000 listens on Spotify a month. So I've been learning a lot as someone who's been an artist for 20 years and is sort of a share household name myself.
And you did mention the emu a little earlier, and I'm not going to mention the emu you were talking about there, but as in Burnie Shines. But you do have so many anecdotes.
There's a lot of emu in the book. If anyone's sort of sitting at home going, an art book, not sure if I'm going to shell out $35 for this. I've made sure to keep it there's a lot of video game references. And if you want to know which video games are at which clubs and milk bars in Burnie, we've got a really detailed map of that. And there's a whole chapter dedicated to the Burnie Park emu. Who
was your nemesis?
He's probably my mentor.
Oh, okay.
Like spiritual, people have
spirit animal?
I was very spiritual as a child, and I wanted a sort of animal totem. And I would go to the emu at the park, and I would poke my finger through the wire, and the emu would bite it, and I would cry, and I would be scarred for life. And there was just something about that process that I needed that to, just evolve as a human.
Look.
and get a huge chip on my shoulder that led to the rage and the ridiculousness that was my career as the bedroom philosopher.
I think for anyone around in the 80s and 90s and that emu, being bitten by that emu was a rite of passage. Justin Hazelwood.
I know, I really wanted to double down on that, and I did research on the emu wars, which is a real thing, and I sort of tried to make some connections, and we've got a really nice high-definition photograph of the emu that was supplied to us, which the book is printed. It's all colour. It's 340 colour pages, which if you can work out how an independent entity like us, the Burnie Arts Council and myself, printing have managed to produce a 340-page colour art book, I'd be interested to hear, because I'm impressed by what we're doing.
It is.
I'm Big Kev excited.
I think it's a cracker. It really is, and it's one of those you just don't skip ahead is what I can say. Don't skip ahead in Dream Burnie, because when you turn each page, there's a little surprise on each page along the way, which is brilliant. Justin Hazelwood, it's been a joy to chat to you. Congratulations on the book, because it really is. It's a piece of art.
Thanks. I've got to mention some sponsors,
yes,
like the Chick-In and Buccachinos.
Chick-In was my very first job.
Oh, really?
It was. It was my very first job. And the very first customer that I served, I came around from the back, and you have to come past the chip cooker on the way, and I came in my brown smock, might I add, and I came round and I slipped in the grease and I went straight down on my backside, straight along, and then I just jumped up and said, "Hello, can I help you?"
and did Warren von Bibra come and help you up?
Look, wasn't
with the Nissan Bluebird,
a
guy in a Nissan Bluebird costume.
His nephew was my long-term boyfriend. This is Burnie we're talking about, Justin.
Hey, Mel, do you want to do a podcast called The Burnie Show, where we just talk about Burnie
stories? Story. Oh, so many. We could do it. Oh,
we've just done episode 1 of the Burnie stories,
and then we'll have to get to the Tasmanian tiger in the Burnie Park enclosure. But that's a story for another. Yeah, it's a thing.
I know they used to have monkeys.
No, yeah, but no. This.
Hey,
is
everyone, get
else.
on Trove and just type in Burnie Park monkeys, and that should fill in another 4 hours of your riveting day.
Oh, it's been a gift. Thank you, Justin. I really appreciate chatting.
Thank you. We'll be launching Dream Burnie through a series of events around Tasmania. Just type it into Google, and we have Burnie's internet presence covered.